Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live stream or video. Um, I I am your host, Buckeye Mike. Oh my god, I don't know why I'm failing at this right now. I've done this enough. Um, I am Buckeye Mike, and it's an honor to be joined by Spearatics today, as we are going to take sort of a deep dive on Florida State. So, if you love them Seminoles, then stay tuned. So, I want to start right here. What's kind of the mood or attitude of the fan base on Mike Norvell?
So I think it's indifferent, and what I mean by that is you have fans that have been around Florida State for 2 decades. You've had fans that came on, right as Florida State started competing again at a high level when Jimbo Fisher took over, and started winning ball games that you're supposed to win, going for ACC titles, winning multiple games per year. And to be completely honest, since 1976, Florida State has not seen a losing season. But you do have fans that at least talked about it. They at least realized that it was a thing. It did happen. Florida State wasn't always as successful as they are now. Um, and then you have every fan base has it. Then you have your fans that um, I don't want to say fair weathered, but they're kind of fair weathered. Here's the truth about it though: is if you got fans that want to hire people that played at Florida State or graduated from Florida State, as in like the Deion Sanders situation, and then you have fans that want to stay completely away from that in the facts of something potentially going wrong. How do you fire someone like Deion Sanders? How can you pull that off? It's just a terrible look if you have to get rid of someone like that. So to be honest with you, I think people in general, as Florida State fans, at first there was quite a few that didn't know if this was a real hire, if we were making a bridge hire, or were we going and getting a guy from a G5 level instead of a huge name. And I think Coach Norvell has won over at least the majority of the fan base, based off of his work ethic, based off of he stays true to his message to the university, to the fans. Um, if it was 2 years ago, I would say that people were still highly questioning the hire. Um, After last year, wins they pretty much solve everything. They start fixing everybody's problem. And based off of the success that Coach Norvell's had on the football field, is just the realization of what work's been put in behind the scenes. So now everyone's realizing what message he's putting across to the university, what he actually stands for, that his message hasn't changed, that he stays true to the university and to himself. And I think for the most part, me personally, I was extremely excited when we hired Coach Norvell. And it was due to the fact that I was living in Memphis at the tenure of his coaching career and what he did for that university as far as the culture goes. Um, I respected probably more than any coach across the country at that time. And once we hired Coach Norvell, based proven off of what he was able to do, I thought it was a home run hit. But just in 3 short years, and the first year being a COVID year where you could barely do anything, for him to stick with it and to continue to prove that he was not going to quit, he was going to fight, he was going to continue to coach at the best of his ability. I think he won a lot of people over, and I think Florida State fans are finally 100% excited for what Coach Norvell brings to the university.
So continuing with Norvell, how has he impacted recruiting, and what does the 24 class look like?
Uh, I will say that some people, they want a top three class or it's not good enough. That's in every fan base. They want the best or it's not good enough. But What Coach Norvell has proven year in and year out that each year that his class gets better. So he's ultimately progressing each year. And so far in the 2024 class, I think that Florida State fans are more excited than they've been in quite some time as far as recruiting goes, based on that you're not missing on the top end running backs that are in the class. You're not missing on top wide receivers anymore. Um, and I think where Coach Norvell needs the most praise at would be in the defensive back room, because in the middle of recruiting the 2024 class, we we lost a coach in Coach Woodson. He moved on to Arkansas, and we brought in Pat Surtain, which had not been a coach in the collegiate era yet. He had, been through high school as American Heritage's high school football coach, which is great. Means he knows how to speak the lingo that the young men talk. And he also moved on to be a analyst for the Miami Dolphins. So he had a proven resume to an extent, not to mention his better than 10-year career in the NFL. But to be able to transition coaches in the middle of a class and still be able to pull in top defensive backs, Coach Norvell had a lot to do with that. He stepped in multiple ways and still steps in to help with Pat Surtain being, transitioning into this position. Some people think they're just supposed to know how to do it. And you're supposed to have you know, there's a blueprint on how you can recruit coming in as a first year coach. And Coach Norvell was that blueprint. He's been along the side of Pat Surtain this entire time. And man, to be completely honest, Florida State, depending on these next couple of months, if Florida State handles business on the field, so to speak, the way that we anticipate that they will, this could be a very, very special class. Could be in the top five. Um, I think it doesn't fall out of the top 10 regardless of what happens. They just moved up to the number 8 compared to 247. Compared to on 3, they moved up to number 7. Compared to 247, was number 8. And that was based off of Landon Charles Lester, the third. And he's one of the best DBs in the 2024 class, especially as far as ranking goes. He's the second 5-star that Florida State's pulled in the entire class, the other one being Landon Thomas that they flipped from Georgia. So I will say that there's been a lot of splash gets this year versus the previous years, but we kind of expected that after a 10-win season. So I think everybody's excited for this class. The Tribe 24 class is amazing. What I will say that Norvell's done, I would say just as good, if not better than any coach across the country, is that each year he's gotten a top tier quarterback, even though all fan bases have seen nothing but Jordan Travis. The first year, bringing in the 22 class, which would be the second year really, but bringing in AJ Duffy, which was the top tier quarterback in that class. Then bringing in Brock in the 23 class, and now bringing in a top 3 quarterback in Luke Kromenhoek. We had a huge problem at Florida State with getting quarterback recruits under Coach Willie Taggart. It was almost impossible. And other than Jameis Winston, really, Jimbo Fisher didn't do great at quarterback either. I mean, other than bringing in Winston, we didn't do all that great. So Florida State's not accustomed to bringing in top quarterbacks, even in the past decade. So really excited for what the quarterback room looks like. And somehow this man continues to get 3 or 4 running backs that could start across the country. So I think that the 24 cycle is going to be the best recruiting class that Coach Norvell's ever landed, even as a head coach, period. And definitely in his tenure at Florida State.
So, under defensive coordinator Fuller, what is the defense expected to look like this year? Where would be the strength in the defense?
So ultimately, I think the strength of the defense is going to be at the defensive line because of the depth that they finally have. You're bringing back Fabian Levitt. You brought in one of the highest transfers in Fisk. You also were able to retain Jackson out of the portal. He's yet to get his waiver, but we expect it sometime in August, mid-August, he should receive a waiver to play because he transferred from Miami. Then you've got Farmer that Florida State was able to keep. There was a lot of teams coming after him. We'll say behind the scenes, they were back channeling to try to pull him away in the portal. Florida State was able to get him to stay, and then the defensive ends with bringing in Jared Verse. Then they brought in another gentleman. His name's slipping my mind right now, but he came from South Carolina. He's another edge rusher that has seen proven himself in the SEC. And then, a lot of people keep asking. Everybody looks at Coach Norvell and this staff as the portal wonders, I guess, that we only can pull guys from the portal. We don't have many high school prospects that we've really started developing. But I tell people to be careful with that because Pat Payton ended up being the ACC Rookie Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's a Norvell prospect and a Coach Fuller prospect that they brought in. He's a defensive end. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. And then there's a gentleman that no one's really talking about. I think that we've started to hype up the situation on Spearatics, but Io Toafasi, he was actually gray-shirted last year because he reclassified to the 23 class, and he's been working out with the team the entire time. And I think Io Toafasi at the defensive tackle position is going to be the surprise of the year. But what I will say, I think people will notice the most improvement. Like if you're just a regular fan that you don't really follow football into depths, I think the most improvement is going to be seen in the DB room. And that's crazy because we did lose one of the best safeties in the country to the draft. But Pat Surtain has a way of coaching that even in our spring game, people had noticed some of our guys that would get burnt throughout the year. They didn't, I'm very technical when it comes to football. Played the game, loved the game. I get to be around people like Peter Warwick, just noticing what hips are supposed to do on DBs and period, whether it be cornerback or safety. And the small techniques that Pat Surtain has started teaching these young players is really starting to show up. So I think the most improvement is going to be seen in the DBs, but it's hard to say, man, like who's going to be the best room. And I know that's not exactly the question, but I think this defense is going to be the best that Florida State has seen probably since 2015. I think this will be the best defense that Florida State's had. I think people will start laying off of Fuller a little bit after this year. They'll realize that he's actually better than what most have anticipated because last year I think we had a top 15 defense, but a lot of fans were still highly questioning the style, the scheme that we ran because we allowed people to pretty much go up and down the field till we get to the red zone. And I think they question that quite often. But Florida State was one of the best at holding people to field goal attempts. They were also one of the best on stopping people on their side of the field. So according to the statistics, we were good, but fans were not at all satisfied with what the defense looked like last year in the whole. But this year they'll be, I think, more satisfied with what they can accomplish on the field.
So basically, overall, there's hype around Fuller and what the defense could be, and hopefully, instead of struggling between the 20 and the 20 and being a lockdown Legion of Boom almost style defense between the 20 and the goal line, we're kind of hoping that it kind of goes out further than the 20s.
Yeah, what I would expect from Florida State's defense this year is a lot of being able to keep them on their side of the field, keeping field position in favor. I think is the biggest thing for Fuller this year. I think that's his focus is to show that we can keep people on their side of the field and control the field position. And he now finally has that personnel to do so. The biggest question with Florida State's defense is the type of scheme that Fuller runs. He needs a particular body type at each position. And the second guy's coming in, which is your second rotation. What our problem was on last year, our defensive line, on the second rotation, you would fall too much from the caliber of player you had. You didn't have those guys that were going to get to the quarterback that could, stop that run in the Y gap or the G gap. So we were allowing a counter play to kind of control the line when Fabian Lovett wasn't in the game. So that's why they brought in a Braden Fisk and Ioto Afasi, and there was just a need after Fabian Lovett was not capable of being in the defensive tackle position due to it's time for a breather, or he was injured a lot last year because he was being asked to do a lot. That's why they brought in so many defensive tackles, and I think that's where you're going to see a huge improvement on not allowing them to get into their red zone, because our problem was we'd get them down to a second or third down, but then Fabian Lovett would have to come out, Jared Verse would have to come out, then you're putting your second line in, and they would expose it, and that would get them their next first down. And then that's when you would see teams. They really knew what Fuller was trying to accomplish with rotation, because they would start running a hurry up on teams that don't normally do it, and that would get them to their own 20. And then there would either be a bogue play that happened, or someone finally needed to call a timeout because of whatever reason, and we got to rotate that number one line back in, and they would stay in for those 4 downs regardless of how tired they were, and that's what we were holding people to field goals on.
So let's talk about the man of the hour. Now, I know Mr. Travis has a lot of hype, but can Jordan Travis win the Heisman Trophy? I personally think he can. He is definitely my dark horse favorite to win the Heisman, and as we'll get to in a little bit when we talk about the schedule, I think he can really lead this team to a further advancement, so to speak.
So personally, I think that Jordan could definitely win the Heisman Trophy. First and foremost, he has to stay healthy for the majority of the year, if not all of it. But what's true about Florida State quarterbacks? We have 3 Heisman winners at Florida State University, all of them being a quarterback, and Charlie Ward, Chris Winkie, and Jameis Winston. Each of them guys had to either be playing for a national title or have won the national title to win the Heisman. The only reason I think that Jordan doesn't necessarily have to win the national title is because of the playoff berth era now. I think if we make it to the first round of the playoffs, if he puts up similar numbers to what he had last year, and we expect it to be more because of what we've added to the offense, like bringing in the Keon Coleman. Destin Hill finally got here to Florida State. If you're a Florida State fan, you know the whole backstory to that. And you've added a lot of pieces like Keziah Holmes is also transferred here from Penn State. So now he's got way more weapons than what he's ever had at Florida State before. There's just a huge arsenal of players that are going to be able to help him out and get those yards and those moments that are Heisman-type moments. So I think that it's going to be his best chance. This is technically his last chance to be able to do so. But this is the best offensive line that Jordan has had at Florida State. This is the most depth that we've seen at offensive line. I actually think that this offensive line in particular on paper is better than what we had in 2013 for Jameis Winston. And we haven't seen that since 2013. It's a huge opportunity for Jordan. And I don't know if people noticed last year, but Jordan used his arm way more than he did his legs last year. And if you look at previous years before that, you saw Jordan Travis just making plays based off of backyard football. He had to run for his life. He had to make plays with his legs, even when that wasn't the play call. And last year, he was really able to settle himself in the pocket. He was having time to let plays develop, and he was able to use his arm more. We had a huge problem with getting Jordan to slide year 1 and 2 under Coach Norvell. He wouldn't go down. He would have to get hit by 5 guys or just completely have his clock clean for him to go down. And he's been taking care of himself better, especially last year. That's why he was able to play all the way up into the bowl game. It's because he started taking care of himself. He's also put on about 15 more pounds of muscle this offseason. So we're going to see a little bit bigger Jordan Travis than we're used to seeing. Luckily, it hasn't taken away from his speed and his efforts with his legs, but he now knows an offense, and that's the biggest thing. The reason why I think he can win a Heisman Trophy is because of the consistency that he's had now in year 3 of the actual offense that we're going into. He now understands this offense front to back, and he has the weapons necessary to get those touchdowns, those yards, and Heisman moments, so to speak. I love when people bring up that Jordan is their dark horse for the Heisman. And then you also are hearing that Florida State's the dark horse for a playoff berth if they can go and win an ACC title. Just for Florida State to be nationally talked about again, it's letting Florida State fans know that what Coach Norvell and this university and Coach Fuller and the athletic director and Michael Alford, there's just a big change from top to bottom with Florida State that's just gearing us up and tooling us to be able to do these things that all Florida State fans expect.
Absolutely. I'm just like everybody else that's a contender for the Heisman. I think it comes down to health. Can your O-line keep you upright? Not necessarily connected back to health, but upright long enough for you to actually sling the ball around and get the stats you need. And I think, the other thing that goes against Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, the projected next Archie Griffin in the sense of back-to-back, is the fact that he did win it last year. And in my eyes, if someone the likes of Tim Tebow can't even win back-to-back or 2 within his 4 years, I think it's darn near impossible to happen, honestly.
I agree.
So, as we look at the schedule, I kind of have 2 questions that go hand in hand. So, does FSU have the pieces in place and the ability to be able to have a New Year's Six bowl? And to go along with that, can they make the playoff?
So to me, we've been talking about this throughout the whole off season. If Florida State can get out of the month of September, even 2-2, so to speak, which I don't anticipate. I think at worst case scenario, Florida State goes 3-1 in the month of September. But this is a hugely favorable schedule after the month of September. I mean, your first game being against LSU, a huge, SEC opponent. We played them last year in the same manner. We were able to pull off that win. And I think Florida State has improved. Therefore, we all know that LSU has also improved. I think that this is going to be a battle game. It's a 50-50 who's going to make the last play kind of game. And I think Florida State, the only thing that they can say that they have over LSU is maybe a little bit of depth in certain areas and more experience together. They've been together longer. So then you move on to, obviously, I don't think Southern Miss or Boston College is going to be an issue in September. But the reason that September is important is because of LSU and then your 4th game of the season being Clemson. A lot of people are looking at September as the we got to prove ourselves month, which is true. But I think what Florida State fans need to pay attention to, and anyone watching, is that getting LSU right off the bat, their first game of the season. Yes, it's still our first game of the season, but we've been together longer. We understand ourselves in continuity better. So I think catching LSU the first game of the season is what's best for Florida State. Because as you noticed, LSU last year heated up a lot during the middle of the season. They started getting really good with each other. They started learning each other. And then catching Clemson on the 4th game of the season, and they don't really play a huge game before us. They're bringing in a brand new quarterback rookie-wise in Klubnik. They've got a brand new offensive coordinator in Riley. Both of them are going to be good. The only thing that I can say that favors Florida State in the situation is they have no continuity together. They do not know each other. There's going to be a lot of changes on that offense because of what Riley brings as a coordinator. And Klubnik may not be comfortable with that yet. And Florida State could really put pressure on their offense. So if you win those 2 games, or you at least win one of those 2, Florida State should be hugely favored into being able to go 11-1. And then people think it's crazy because I say our floor is 10-2 and our ceiling's 11-1, and they're like, there's only a 1 game difference. Well, the reason being is because Duke could be a team that's a dark horse in the situation that we have to play. So could Pitt, but I don't think that either one of them are going to be able to pull off against the talented team that Florida State's bringing. I don't think they can pull off a win, especially Duke at our homecoming. So it's a hugely favored schedule for Florida State after the month of September, and I think it's time for Florida State. It's their best opportunity to take the ACC back. I think that we end up playing Clemson twice this year, so whether they beat us in September or we beat them, I think we meet again in Charlotte. And as long as we win the one in Charlotte, it's the one that I care about. I don't care if I want to win all of them, but if we lose the one in September and win the one at Charlotte, I'm fine with that.
So, can they make the playoffs? Do you think it's just out of their reach, being that it's a 4-team playoff, or do you think that the schedule does kind of favor the possibility of, okay, for example, if you guys go out there and you drop one to LSU, which, like Brian Kelly, even more now that he took down Nick Saban a notch, but I don't see LSU being the one to knock you guys off. I feel like you said, it's more Clemson, and that would be the one that I'm worried about, because like you said, as long as maybe Clemson holds up their end of the bargain, if that's the one you do lose, and you have a Texas-Oklahoma 2018 style where you lose the regular season one, they hold up their end of the bargain, you guys hold up yours, you go both meet in the ACC championship, and then you guys walk out with the win. As long as that's your only loss, I know it's hard to read the committee, but it seems that, if you lose to someone in your conference, that's your only loss, you turn around, beat them in the conference title game, it's usually favorable in the conference winner's favor.
Yeah, I definitely think of Florida State, it would be scarce if Florida State lost 2 games in this season. I think that would get them just out of reach. And also that depends on who they would to lose to. But if they lost to LSU and Clemson in the regular season and then beat Clemson in the ACC championship, I think they would have to beat Clemson and everyone else on the schedule in a 15 to 20 point favor in every game for the committee to even consider Florida State. Because other than LSU and Clemson, and maybe 1 or 2 other teams, maybe, the strength of schedule really starts to fall off. A lot of these ACC teams are down and out. So it's not favorable for you to be able to lose 2 games and be considered. So they would have to only lose one of those games, or lose 2 and beat everybody by 15 to 20 points to be even looked at. But that's why it's so important for Florida State to take care of the regular season and also win the ACC title. Because I think even if you win, say we went 12-0 in the regular season, but we lose the ACC championship, I think that could potentially put us out of reach as well if Clemson only lost to us, but they turn around and beat us in the championship game, the one that matters. True. I think both being 12-1 at that time, they would have to favor Clemson in the head-to-head at ACC. So I think they have to win the ACC title to be in the playoff mix.
I think in order to basically pull off a Georgia from 2021, you'd probably have to be like number 2 or number 3 and lose to Clemson by like probably 10 points or less, would be my guess. But, this is just my opinion, and I guess maybe I have really high stock on Florida State. This is kind of what I see, including the ACC title game. Like I said, for me, the one up in the limbo where the floor could be 12-1, would be Clemson the first go around if Clemson is the conference title matchup.
I definitely agree with that prediction. I think that Florida State could, easily go 12-1, and in the AC, including the ACC title right there. I think that you're 100% correct. And I also think that if Florida State does exactly what they're supposed to, that they could win 13 games in a row. I think that it's way more possible than people want to admit, especially if this team stays in the majority healthy. I think they could definitely pull it off. And, a lot of people are hyping up Florida State. They really are. But a lot of teams and a lot of locker rooms aren't respecting Florida State yet, based off of what I've heard from certain fans and certain players. They say the hype's around Florida State, and it's just hype, and they're going to show people why it's just hype. So I think they're going to take us lightly. Some may, and that's going to be their downfall in that game because they're not going to realize what's hitting them. I think they're going to. I think sometimes being overhyped. I don't think Florida State's in the position to have a target on their back yet. I don't think people are looking at us that way. Now, if we come out and beat LSU by 14 points, beat Clemson by 14 points, we're going to have a target on our back. Everybody's fixing to give us their best. But if we squeeze out against LSU and squeeze it out against Clemson, they're still like, yeah, they're getting lucky. They're not, really the best that they think they are. The only reason they beat LSU is because they're, it's basically a home game in Orlando. The only reason they beat Clemson because they got a brand new coordinator. You'll start hearing stuff like that. And then you're not going to have a target on your back. But if Florida State starts, in any times double-digit wins against those two teams, they'll get a target on their back, and people will be coming after them then. But I think pressure creates diamonds, and I think that's what Florida State needs. They need this pressure, and they've had this pressure. According to Coach Norvell, they've had this pressure on them already. It's been internal. They've had this pressure. They anticipated on going to the playoffs last year. They wanted to make that run. They had a few slip ups, with health, and they weren't able to do so. So now that the fan base and the outer part of the country is putting this pressure on them, Norvell anticipates that this is what this team needs to get over that hump. So he loves it. He's embracing it. I think the players are embracing it. Jared Verse, the defensive end, he's our crazy man. He's definitely he's wild, and we love him to death for it. But he's eating this all up, man. Like this is why he came to Florida State. This is the reason for his existence, and he's highly motivating this team, whether it be offense or defense. He's definitely our vocal leader, and he's embracing this like nobody else. This is where he wants to be. So I think Florida State can only beat themselves this year if they don't take care of themselves. You have to execute every play. You have to – your reaction to even messing up has to be perfect. So if you make a mistake, then you have to, rebuttal with a perfect play or perfect attitude to continue on. And I think they will. I think Florida State has a big chance this year. I think a lot of people are still sleeping on Florida State. I really do.
Yeah, I would think so too. They definitely could be a playoff dark horse. I mean, I have them in the playoffs. And like I said, I think, in my opinion, of course, depending on how the season goes, but at least headed into the season, my dark horse for the Heisman would be Travis. So things are definitely looking up for Florida State, and it's good to see because it's kind of transition. Like Jimbo Fisher era was good because you made the playoff and you won the national title. It almost feels like it's transitioning back to like the Bobby Bowden years.
Yeah.
Where you're constantly up there, you're constantly a contender. I will say that the 12-team playoff does help.
Absolutely.
Coming in next year, so it'll be a lot easier to make the playoff. So, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it. More football and whatnot. So,
I kind of want to ask a question here, and I know that we're talking about Florida State, but our full expectations with it moving to a 12-team playoff is for Florida State to be in that mix every year because of
Mhm.
it being 12 teams. Ohio State fans would be in the same belief, right? Y'all would expect to be in that
Oh,
playoff continuance every year being 12 teams. Okay. I'm just
mhm.
making sure that we're not, going off the table with thinking that we're supposed to be in the playoffs every year because I told people, I'm like, if this gets moved to a 12-team playoff, we have got to be in the conversation every year. And I mean,
Mhm.
like teams like Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, um, I think all of them should be considered those 12 teams in one way or fashion. Um, do you think when they move to the 12-team playoff, do you
Mhm.
think we're going to see a majority of SEC teams? You think we'll see 6, 7 SEC teams like the SEC is trying to predict? Because I personally don't. I don't think they get that many in.
As long as there are 4 to 5 Power Five conferences that we have, I don't see the number being that crazy. Now with all this realignment stuff going on, if the ACC would dissolve after the Pac-12 is likely to dissolve within the next 7 years, I would guess, then maybe I could see the SEC number go up. But I mean, if you look at the SEC, who's your best teams? LSU, Bama, even though they're starting to slowly fall apart. Georgia. Who else? There's not really anybody else outside of those three.
That's
So
what
this
I've been
whole
trying to explain
six,
for.
7 team is like,
Yep. That's what I've been trying to explain. They said, they keep saying that this conference is this, that, and the other. There's only one good team in it, or it's top heavy. And I'm like, what conference isn't top heavy? If you look at the Big Ten, you've got Ohio State, Michigan for the most part. You could add a Penn State in there.
mm-hmm,
You could sometimes, I'm not even gonna say that, but so you could put the Penn State in the mix with those two. And then you go to the ACC, it's been Florida State or Clemson.
mm-hmm,
I mean, the third team, I mean, you can't really give it to Wake Forest or Pitt because they only had 2 good years and only one ACC title played for. But we expected Miami to be that third team that makes it top heavy, and
yeah,
they just haven't accomplished it yet. So I don't know what conference isn't top heavy though. Like everyone tries to say that the SEC brings the best college football, and I disagree.
I
I've been
mean,
saying that it's the Big Ten for this
yeah,
past decade. I have said that it's been the Big Ten, and the reason being is because there's been actual back and forth with Michigan and Ohio State, and getting them both into the college football playoffs last year. Some people got mad about it. They were like, "Those two Big Ten teams shouldn't be in there." The blah blah blah. I'm like, "No, they should." You tell me what other teams are better than them across the country. It doesn't have to be in the Big Ten. What teams are better
Bama,
than those two right now?
Bama, they had 2 losses last year, so
That's what I
there's
couldn't
no
understand.
lost in. Bama's still better than Ohio State.
No, they weren't, and it wasn't even close. And that's what killed me because I don't know if it's that the SEC fans are the most vocal, and the
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten and the ACC and Pac-12 and all them sit back and just don't speak on it. But I told the SEC people that are all, SEC is the best conference and the SEC is this and that. I said, only because you're the most vocal don't mean you're the best. The loudest one don't mean you're the smartest. It also doesn't make you the best. So, me personally, another question that I wanted to ask because me and my co-host, which is James Coleman, he's a former fullback at Florida State
Mm-hmm.
that's on my show every episode. Me and him both are predicting Florida State to go to the Big Ten once the ACC dissolves.
Thank you.
We're not only predicting it; we actually have a lot of evidence on why they would be going to the Big Ten. We had Michael Alford, the athletic director from Florida State, on,
Mm-hmm.
and without saying so many words, he still said so many words. If that makes sense, they can only say certain things, but we went and hired, so you understand. Like Florida State's biggest issue with losing Jimbo Fisher wasn't It wasn't what people think it is. It wasn't that Florida State didn't have the money. It was that our administration didn't want to spend the money on building a standalone facility. They didn't think we needed it because Bobby didn't need it for decades before. There was no reason for us to need it now. And he just won a national title. And, in Jimbo's mind, win a national title, I'll get what I want. And in their mind was you just want it without the facilities, so you're not getting a facility. So it backfired. Jimbo's whole plan backfired on him. And that's why they had to separate. But what people didn't realize was we still had the same administration in place when Jimbo left. We had the same athletic director. He made the hire of Willie Taggart, and then he stepped down and went to the NCAA. And then we had an interim athletic director for 2 years. And he's never been an athletic director. Didn't really want the job. He just took it to help the university. And then Florida State board, they go and hire McCullough. They bring him in as the president of the university. And then we bring in Michael Alford, the athletic director. Here's the reason why, the two biggest reasons why we say we're trying to get to the Big Ten. We went and hired McCullough. His background, he was the president of Harvard. He is a big reason on keeping the AAU membership for Harvard. And we are actively going to get the AAU membership. And people aren't realizing what Florida State's been doing. They've intertwined with Tallahassee on one of the largest medical research facilities in the country. We just got that done this year. We have the largest magnet in the world that we do research with. We just enhanced our engineering development group tenfold compared to what it was, and now we're fixing to start a lot of seismic studies, researches. We're going the research route. We want to be the research public, basically, of the state of Florida. We want to be in that game. So we're actively trying to get the AAU membership. Michael Alford answered that question, said that, yes, that's McCullough. He's actively getting us to where we need to be to get the AAU membership. We did find out that you don't necessarily have to have the AAU membership before you get into the Big Ten. You just have to have proof that you're going to get it. And that's what Florida State is doing. They're putting that resume together. But hiring Michael Alford, he also is like best friends with, I don't know, I think it's 8 of the major board members of the Big Ten. Like, that's his stomping ground. The Big Ten's the people he knows. That's the people that he wants to conjunct with. And there's multiple other things that people could go and watch this episode that we did and see all the evidence that we put together while Florida State's trying to get into the Big Ten. But the SEC also has a rule that if Florida State was to join the SEC, Miami couldn't, because they're only going to allow 2 teams from each state. Like, they won't have more than 2 teams in a state. So it would be Florida and Florida State if we joined the SEC. So we wouldn't be able to bring Miami along. And Florida State and Miami have this, I don't know if it's an unspoken agreement or if it's a spoken agreement, that we're going to stay in the same conference. So I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but Miami just this year got their AAU membership. It was granted to them this year. So they're now AAU members. So the idea behind this is that Florida State and Miami both conjunct over to the Big Ten. I don't know who else y'all would bring in, but I know those 2 for a fact. I don't think the Big Ten's interested in Clemson. They're not a research type school. I don't think it would be them. On a football aspect, that would be great, but on every other aspect, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
But maybe a Virginia or a North Carolina. And the reason being is the Big Ten is trying to get into those markets. They want those TV revenue markets. What would open up for the Big Ten to be in the state of Florida? You got the tip of Florida with the panhandle of Florida State, and you've got southern and central Florida with getting Miami. Like, y'all are fixing to own 2 of the biggest TV revenue markets that there are. So, and then everybody that's SEC wise, they're like, that doesn't make geographical sense for us to go to the Big Ten. Yes, it does. We travel more being in the ACC than we would if we were in the Big Ten. I've done all the research. That's also on there. How many miles we fly. We go up and play in Pitt. We go and play in Boston College. We go and play Notre Dame when that happens, which they're like a part-time member of the ACC.
So
We go up,
already.
yeah, we go up in Virginia, we go up into those areas. Ohio State is the same flight time from Florida State that it is to us going to Boston College. It's no different. Pitt is the same flight distance for us as if we went to Michigan. It's the same amount of hours. It's damn near the same mileage. And I'm like, we already do this. And, I tell people, remember, we're always going to have 7 home games. You're only talking about traveling for a portion of your schedule. And with them, with the Big Ten adding USC, I think the Big Ten is showing why they're going to be the highest paid conference based off of these brands that they already have.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to continue to grow that revenue with bringing in the Florida States, the Miamis, the USCs, and whomever else it ends up being. But I think the SEC is actually caught off guard with how many schools want to be in the Big Ten. And I try to tell people, whether it's the best for our football or not, whether we agree on that or don't, I think it is. But for our entirety of our university, being in the Big Ten is a much bigger benefit than being in the SEC. And I'm not downplaying the SEC. They like to play like they're the dumb conference. They're not. They actually have multiple schools that have AAU memberships and things to that nature. But Florida State wants to be a part of that research, just whole program that's going on. They want to be a part of the basket. They want to help bring basketball back to an extent in the Big Ten, to where I think it's lost a little bit of movement. But y'all would end up adding 2 decent baseball teams, 2 really decent basketball men's, a great women's basketball in both Miami and Florida State. You bring in some of the best golf in the Big Ten that I think that they would have. There's just a lot of things that Florida State, Miami, and then North Carolina, and that's who I'm just throwing in there, that they would add to what the Big Ten's already got. And it puts the Big Ten on the map for everything that they don't have. It's, so to speak, and I know people think it's crazy, but our swim and dive teams, I don't think people realize how much money and how much revenue that actual sport brings to Florida State. I mean, it would put you just see the Big Ten so often on television or so often in this news report or this news report. If you had those other 3 schools or 4 schools, wearing that Big Ten logo, the Big Ten is going to feel like they own the country. You've already got this portion of it on. It's like you're surrounding the SEC. Like this.
Yeah, there's like a big storm.
Like, yeah, you're in our core here, but you ain't getting out. That's kind of what we're surrounding you. And me, man, I think that for Florida State fans, as long as we get out of the ACC, we're going to be happy. We'll accept the SEC or the Big Ten, but to me and to the other guy, and then to also what evidence we brought forth, we just don't see us trying to go in the SEC. We turned it down in the 90, and there was ultimate reasons why we did. It wasn't because we were scared to play SEC teams. Bobby Bowden made that known. We played anybody anywhere. That was how he won his first 2 national titles, is not being scared to play anyone anywhere. And so it wasn't the schedule. It was we were disrespected first. When we were looking for a conference, they told us we weren't good enough to be an SEC team yet. So then when they came back to us in 90 and offered it, Bobby's like, no, you don't get us now. You could have got us then, and now you want us because of what we're doing. No. So we joined the ACC. Well, the Big Ten, they were the only thing that was separating us from getting in the Big Ten back then was the research, was the AAU possibility. We just wasn't there yet. We were so far behind in those rooms of research. And now the Big Ten, been telling us for years, get this, get this, get this. And over these years we have, because I think it's been an ultimate goal for a long time. It's just these 2 in particular gentlemen have really stuck it forward on making sure we get it. And I can't wait till it happens. I'm just ready for it to all calm back down. Florida State knows they're in this conference. We know we're getting the money we're worth. We know that we can compete with everybody across the country based off of what we are receiving. So I can't wait for it to happen because I'm just tired of hearing about it. I'm ready for it to all happen and be done with. This whole thing, man, has been people knew the journalism that went into going and trying to find all of this just to find out what we are thinking about doing has been more work than I've ever went through. So I'm ready for it to be over with.
I did a video on this exact kind of thing. I think right after USC and UCLA said they were coming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know or realize about the gentleman's agreement with Miami. But in the video, I said that it was going to be Florida State, Clemson, Washington, and I think Oregon would be your next big wave of teams to come in.
I mean, I could see it. I'm not gonna lie. But the only reason that I'm saying that Miami is a definite is because there's no reason for them to get that AAU membership otherwise. They've been going after it for a while too. I think Florida State and Miami's been talking about this for some years now. I think everybody is in cahoots with each other. And I don't think the Big Ten's blind to it. They know it. They know what we've been trying to accomplish. So, but I mean, man, I would be ecstatic if y'all brought in Washington, Oregon, Florida State, and Clemson. Like, it wouldn't bother me none. I'm not hung on Miami. I don't need Miami for. We're going to play them regardless of what conference we're in. I'm just. I don't know what happens if y'all bring 6 teams in. Who knows? Like, I don't know what everybody's moves are, but I don't put anything past the Big Ten of accomplishment. I mean, I think they could take 6 as easy as they take 4, and they could take 2 as easy as they take 9. The Big Ten ain't hurting for nothing. They can do what they need to do, and they're going to make sure that they. I know that the Big Ten's not going to take no, and it's no offense to these other teams, but the Big Ten's not going to take the Memphises, you know what I'm saying, the guys that might be in that USA conference, or whatever it's called now. They're not going to take them and let the SEC take Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Miami. They're not going to let that happen. It's not possible. So
Yeah,
I'm ready for y'all to open the damn door so we can come in, because I'm telling you, man, it's been something going back and forth with fans. I will say this, I thought the majority of our fans would be SEC biased, because there's over the years people have been saying we should be in the SEC, should have been in the SEC. But believe it or not, I've put up multiple polls, and I've also researched multiple polls that others have put up, and the majority of Florida State fans actually picked the Big Ten over the SEC, and that surprised me. It was very surprising to us when we did the research. I'm also on the Mark Rogers show on Wednesdays. I don't we do the Florida State show, and man, we brought on so many different experts talking about conference realignment, and we've even got, I think it's 8-2. 8 of us voted that Florida State's going to the Big Ten, and 2 voted that they were going to the SEC. So even the majority of votes are going toward Florida State's got to be gearing up to go to the Big Ten. But I would love to travel. And you forgive me for the name of y'all stadium slipping my mind, but for Florida State to be able to go play at Ohio State, I don't see, to me, and y'all coming to Doak Campbell, there's not a game that outsells those games. Like, especially the first 2 or 3 years of that happening. Like, if we were the first year to go visit Ohio State as the away team, I promise you, y'all are about to see a lot of Floridians. It's about to happen. We're coming. We want to see what that stadium's like, because, I mean, we hear about it. We get to see it on TV. I think it's one of the most beautiful fields in college football. And for us to go to the big house, for us to go to just the historical places that the Big Ten brings to what Florida State's done historically, I don't think you can put a price tag on it. It would be ridiculous. I don't know what I'm going to pay for those tickets, but it's going to be worth it. I know that.
Yes, I'm definitely working towards being able to go to more, especially away games. Like, I know we've got home and homes coming up with Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Bama. I'm looking forward to really, even if I have to scrounge something together for the ticket and sit all the way at the tippy top in the nosebleeds, I will sit up there just to say, hey, I went there, and if we beat them, I was there when we beat them in their house and we punched them in the mouth.
Yep. And then, the biggest thing is like what me and James Coleman have noticed. We've got a couple of chain motels that sponsor our show. So no matter what game it is, no matter where it is in the country, if they have, a Hilton this or a oh boy, I forget the other name, Marriott this or that, we have that same price no matter where it's at in the country. We get to go for that price. So if you have travel issues, hit me up and let me know. Hey, I'm coming to the Alabama Ohio State game whenever that's happening in the years to come, or places that you're not used to going to. We'll just say that we get it cheaper than anybody. I mean, to stay in a motel like what we're staying in, for it to be like a 1-bedroom apartment studio or a suite, and for you to get that under $200 in a big weekend, yeah. So you ever need help travel wise, let me know, and I'll send you the it's a membership code that you would put in, and they give you the price. Just let me know if you need it.
All righty, definitely. But yeah. So I mean, I know you kind of said that. Oh, dang it. The president or whatever said without actually saying, but I mean, it's still kind of breaking news.
Oh yeah. So when we did that, so athletic director offered, I directly asked him on the interview, and I asked him before we even started the video if I could ask the question, and he said absolutely. So I asked him, I said, is Florida State actively looking to get the AAU membership, and is that because of needing it to get into the Big Ten? Now, he was the one that educated us on that you didn't need it to get into the Big Ten. You just needed to prove you were getting it. He said, but yes, we were actively trying to get the AAU membership. So that was the way of saying it without saying it. He didn't come out and say Florida State's trying to get into the Big Ten, but he said for teams to get into the Big Ten, they at least have to prove they're trying to get the AAU membership. And yes, Florida State is actively trying to get the AAU membership. And then there was big smiles across the screen. Everybody knew what that meant. It was just he couldn't say, yeah, Florida State's trying to get out of the ACC. And it, we had the interview right after he had the board of directors meeting that was made public, where he was talking about the ACC wasn't holding up to their end of the deal. And where all this started, like, oh, Florida State and others are trying to leave. Florida State's the one that started this. And Michael Alford's the man that spoke the first words of, we're not going to sit here and get $30 million, $35 million less a year than the Big Ten or the SEC and be able to compete. And we want to be able to compete at the top of the national level. We anticipate national titles. We anticipate championships. And we can't do that if we're losing $30 million a year. 10 years, you're $300 million. You can't make up for that gap. So I'll just say that the conversations we've had with administration behind closed doors, and that's not naming anybody, just people that are there. We know for a fact Florida State's trying to get into the Big Ten. It's not a question. It's not a we know what they're attempting to do, and then we know what Miami was also attempting to do. The reason Miami was able to get their AAU membership is because they were already known for a medical research facility. But they never even tried to go after the AAU membership until Florida State said, look, we're going to all be moving, and we're trying to get into the Big Ten. Y'all need to do the same. The next thing we hear is Miami is getting granted their AAU membership. And that was a year after the conversation had happened. So, yeah, it's I think by 2025 or 2026 is when we would be entering that conference. I think we could potentially speak on it this year, but I think the announcement comes out no later than the off season of next year or this season, like the off season after this is over. It's going to come out that Florida State's actively moving. They're going to make it verbal. We were also waiting on y'all to get a commissioner at the Big Ten, and I think y'all done so now. And those talks have all been taking place as well. And that was what the weird thing was. Something else that was evidence, and I don't want to leave this out. But last year, y'all do this thing with the Big Ten conference, and I can't remember the name of the show, but it comes on the Big Ten network where we've got all the students from the Big Ten are helping in the community. They did this walk across the bridge. There was a lot of big things that were taking place. Tell me why every school that was there were Big Ten schools. Athletic wise, all the athletes that were from every Big Ten school were at this event. Why was Florida State Derek McClendon in a Big Ten t-shirt representing Florida State for the Big Ten? I was like, wait a minute. Why is this happening? And me and Derek McClendon are really close. Unfortunately, this year he transferred to Colorado based off of playtime. But he was the guy that they chose to send, like Florida State. The university decided to send Derek McClendon to this Big Ten thing. We were the only school outside of the Big Ten that was there. Why would we be there? Why are we
right? Like,
he's talking. He's got video of talking to the commissioner of the Big Ten. He had video of talking to administration of the Big Ten. He had video of what Florida State would add to the, like, there was just so many things to it. And I'm like, they're literally telling us what they're doing without telling us what they're doing. And then we even on the media dropped the video of Derek McClendon being at this Big Ten only event. Like, there's so many tall tales to what was going on before. We put all of that together before we ever interviewed Michael Alford. And then once we interviewed him, he had told us before the show started, I've been watching everything that y'all been doing. He was like, y'all slow down a little bit. Quit putting it out there before we can even say anything. And I'm like, sir, you tell me what to say and what not to say. It won't be a problem. But yeah, man, I'm ready for it. I've been ready for it. Can't wait for it to happen. This was enjoyable. I am very long-winded. If you ever want me to hush, just tell me, hey, I got questions.
You're fine.
I'm very long-winded. I get in trouble for this all the time. I guess that's why I'm speaking at a Orlando alumni group tonight. This is their kickoff event. And after this one, I'm going to Atlanta to do that one. So,
wow.
I started moving up pretty good. I don't know how. I don't know what I did right, but it's all working, and I'm happy for it. And this is one that I can't be wrong on. We got to go to the Big Ten. I've done said too much. It's got to happen. But this was very enjoyable. You have anything else that you want to ask me?
Is there anything outside of the like sports powers that Florida State could potentially bring to the Big Ten?
Yes. So Florida State, as far as on the research side, having the largest magnet research that they do, and they're huge in seismic studies in like earthquakes, and we do a lot of engineering stuff. Also, there's this lawyer research program. I forget what exactly it is, but the seismic thing, the magnet one, and there's this agriculture program that we've got is something that no school in the Big Ten's got. So it's gonna like elevate. Matter of fact, if Florida State was to join the Big Ten, it would give Ohio State this exact magnet program, the exact seismic study program, and the exact agriculture program. I think y'all are trying to up y'all's agriculture thing and your magnet, whatever this magnet thing is. I just know it's a big ass magnet. But y'all have been trying to get into that space for the past 5 years. And I think the issue was on the seismic side is we had so many fault lines within our reach that we could study, and y'all only had one. So you couldn't really bounce your evidence off of this one or that one. So once we start sharing our research evidence off of the New Madrid fault line and this fault line, and y'all can compare it to the one that you have up there, it's supposed to open up all these doors for both schools. And we got another one with Michigan that we're going to really help them with. I can't remember what program that is, but Other than sports, man, I would say that Florida State is the 19th top public university in the country. This is the highest GPAs that students have had ever at the university. This is the highest graduating success rate that we've had in history. Um, Even our athletes across the board, this is the highest GPA has been held by athletes at our university ever. We're at 19 now. Next year, we're anticipating to jump to number 12. That's our goal for the public university side. We want to jump from 19 to 12. And then by the time we get into the Big Ten, it literally would jump. I think y'all are 2 right now, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all are at number 2. Y'all go back and forth between 1 and 2. Um, but sometimes it's Harvard that jumps in, sometimes it's Yale that jumps in.
Of course.
But because of how much larger y'all student body is and how large Florida State student body is, we win because of how many numbers y'all have got and we've got on those smaller schools. Harvard's, they're Harvard. Yale's Yale, but they don't have that many students. They don't accept thousands and thousands. So Harvard's needing our help as far as our Ohio State, Florida State, Miami for the law programs that we've got. We're starting to do these mock programs to where our law students from Florida State are doing mock sessions with Ohio State lawyers. It's so that the demographic gets understood. Like, us in the South, we've got certain slang terminologies that isn't used up north. Y'all don't hear some of the words that we use. And the last thing you want is to be in a legal battle and this Florida lawyer says this, and this, and this Ohio guy takes it as this is what that means, but it means something completely different. So we're trying to get everybody on the same page, even though the English language is supposed to be the English language. There's a lot of things that we're trying to teach northern schools on how we work down in the South, and there's a lot of things that y'all are teaching us. Like, we're implementing a lot of things into our university based off of what Ohio State's done, Michigan's done, Harvard's done. And I also think that's the reason why we jumped to the top 20 in public universities is because we started taking on a lot of y'all's curriculum. We started taking on the curriculum from y'all's research facility, medical wise. We started adding certain things that we didn't have before. Like Ohio State, like a lot of people don't know this. Ohio State has been sharing a lot of information with Florida State for decades. There's been a lot of research stuff being shared back and forth, helping each other on whatever project that they've got going. And that's the really cool part of it, man. It was just this past season. There was a student from Ohio. There was 3 of them, but I talked to one. 3 Ohio State students were down at Florida State doing research with the magnet. And I thought it was wild. I was like, what are Ohio State fans doing? I thought they were fans. I'm like, there's no game. Like, are we playing their softball team or are we playing like, I didn't know what was going on. And the young man, he's like, no, we're here to do research with the largest magnet in the country. And Florida State's opening their doors to us to let us, we got to do this for our project and blah, blah, blah. Well, I thought it was, 3 students trying to do a project. It's not this huge research thing or not. No, it was big. It helped y'all completely, we'll say revolutionize exactly how a train system is going to work in the near future. Like, y'all have got some really big things that are being worked on that I don't know if it's okay to talk about publicly or not, but y'all are working on some really cool things as far as transportation goes in Ohio. Like, y'all's students are actually leading the way in multiple avenues of how they fix a problem in the northern hemisphere, because we'll just say there's some things that get too slick or too cold, or that they can keep warm with certain magnets and certain things going on.
Okay.
They're, in the inner city, like, so downtown Columbus, for instance, y'all do a really good job of keeping your roads clear when it snows and ice. I mean, y'all do a phenomenal job. But what if you could do it and it costs less than half the cost? So if you put this certain metal flakes in your asphalt or your concrete,
Mm-hmm.
and this truck runs by every once in a while that's got this particular magnet on it, it'll keep the temperature of the asphalt at a degree that nothing can freeze on top of it. So there's a lot of big things that they're working on that would, we'll just say, save the entire country a lot of money. And they've been going back and forth with this for about, I guess, 5 years, and they had a huge breakthrough this past year. And off live, I could talk about it more, but there's just there's a lot of big things being worked on that these students are changing how we operate in the United States at a more effective cost that would help in
Mm-hmm.
so many ways. And I think that everything that Florida State and Ohio State, Michigan, as much as y'all don't like Michigan, y'all as premier students have done some really really cool things together. Um, it is to unite all of these universities in being able to use all of these brains at once and get the best scenario out of it. And that's what the AAU is about anyway. That's why it's like so important for Florida State. We want the smartest of the smart to come down to Florida State, start talking to our students about this or that or the other. And then the same goes for y'all have a professor that I love to death at Ohio State
Mm-hmm.
that we'll just say I think he knows everything, but um, he actually told us, he was like, I came down there to do a seminar on this in particular measure. And while I was there, I wanted to peek in on this seminar because I have large interest in that category.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a 19-year-old student teach me in 10 minutes everything that I thought I knew about this subject. In 10 minutes, he completely changed my whole way of thinking. And it's being able to integrate with people that are, like I'm not going to go ask a plumber to change or fix the electricity in my house, you know, and that's what the professor, he used it perfect. He used the analogy, and he was like, y'all are, day in, day out for the past 20 years have studied this, and I get to do it on my spare time. And within 10 minutes, this young man explained more to me than I've learned in the past year on doing it on my own in my spare time.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to get students in the same room that these guys have been studying this for a decade, these guys have been studying this for a decade, let's cross train each other, cross educate is going to be a huge deal. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, there's some there's a certain way that y'all build bridges up in the north because of the rock that you have to drive the piles into. Well, we've learned a way to make the sand down here in Florida, in the state of Florida, react to the piles the same way it would in rock. So we're making the sturdiest bridges that you could potentially make in sand. Like
Mm-hmm.
our bridges have a X amount of flex in them right now.
Mm-hmm.
With if we start building them the way, which we have done now, a majority of them, but if we started building them the way that y'all were doing up north in the Ohio area for more of the realm of it, now our bridges don't flex but this much. So we're not having to do as much maintenance on our bridges like every 10 years versus every 2 years. So when we started sharing that information with each other engineering wise,
Mm-hmm.
it gave all these engineers this idea. So it makes sense to you, other than talk about Florida State. I'm geotechnical environmental engineering. So this is all of what I do. Geothermals, seismic studies. I've been doing it my whole life. My dad was in it, so I was in it, and so on. But um, we did a lot of research with Ohio State as well. So I'm not a huge fan of some of y'all's fans because they come at me a lot. I don't know why, because I really like Ohio State. Um, but there's some Ohio State fans that they were they were coming at me saying Florida State didn't have near the pedigree that Ohio State did, and I was comparing apples and oranges. And the thing was, is I said OSU, and I said it. And to an Ohio State fan, that's Ohio State University, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about Oklahoma State University. That's who I was talking about, and they thought I was talking about Ohio State,
Oh
and
my.
that's why they hated me. And that they never. They would never give me the benefit of the doubt, man. I said I was not talking about Ohio State. I was talking about Oklahoma State University, man. And he was like, nope, y'all think y'all are this and that. And I'm like, I have no problem with Ohio State, but it happens. Trolling happens, but yeah, man, I'm excited for all of it. You ever want me on the show, or as a matter of fact, a week before the season starts, I would like to have you on Spearatics and we're gonna have a Michigan guy. We're gonna have if you come, you'd be the Ohio State guy. We're
Mhm.
gonna have a gentleman from Miami and multiple other schools that are gonna come on and give a prediction on what their season's gonna look like, kind of like this. Um,
Mhm.
and then y'all get to hear our predictions on what we think Ohio State's gonna do and what we think Michigan's gonna do. And I'll just say that we're not Michigan fans, so you won't have a problem with us picking Michigan. But um, I would much prefer y'all beat at least Harbaugh is not suspended for the game that y'all got to play against them. Because then they would say the only reason Michigan lost to Ohio State is because Jim Harbaugh wasn't there. Okay,
Still his guys.
yeah, okay. Well, I don't, man. Some of what these fans say, I'm like,
I know. It irritates me too because it's like we're not all like that. I mean,
no,
I'm doing a show every week during the season with a Michigan guy. We can get along. It's not that big a deal. I
no,
mean, there is a such thing as life once the clock hits the triple zeros.
yes, absolutely. Now
And
during this game, I hate your guts. After this game is over, man, how you doing? Like it's not hard. Like I
yeah,
understand that promotes bipolarism, but what fanatic? Y'all know what fan stands for fanatic. Like that's what we are. We're bipolar. All of us are. But yeah, man, we would love to have you on. When are you? I know you're probably gonna do some editing and stuff because we've been on a tandem of talking. Um, when would this show go on so that I can let the Florida State fans know, and that would really help your channel as well. I think.
yeah, I do definitely appreciate it. I mean, we're actually technically live right now.
Okay, so we're on YouTube, and I'm running my mouth.
You're good.
Well, that's cool. I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm gonna start getting ready for this event. Unless you got anything else. Um, as you can tell, once you ask me something, I go on a tangent.
You're
So be
good.
careful.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say this has been really enlightening. I appreciate all the insight and input and info. Um, I definitely, I've been working on like doing the lives and then going back and cutting it up for like the actual segments. So, I mean, I can definitely shoot those over to you when that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. Just let me know when you put them up. That'd be cool.
And for those on my end that don't really know you or where to find you, where can they find you?
So the best thing that I could tell everybody, it's really easy to find me on any social media, especially YouTube. That's kind of my bread and butter. What I like to do at Spearatics, the same way that it is on the screen. You type that in, you'll find all those videos, especially for Ohio State fans or Big Ten fans that would like to see Florida State come to the Big Ten, and you would like to see the rest of that evidence. You can go back, or you can go to Spearatics and go back to those episodes. They're literally labeled, and it's really nice to be honest. But Florida State to the Big Ten, and then we've also got the interview with Michael Alford, which is the athletic director at Florida State, directly after that one. So if you would like to hear all of that information on why I think Florida State's coming to the Big Ten and all of the evidence that we put together on why it's happening, y'all can go check that out at Spearatics on YouTube. I'm also a huge Twitter user, which now I guess is the X. I guess I don't know. We're also on Facebook. We have a group page called Spearatics that is over 8,000 members now. That's where it all started, to be honest. So if y'all would like to check all that out, you actually do not on our group pages. You don't run into trolling. Like if you're an Ohio State fan and you just, I don't know, Florida State's your second favorite team or whatever the case may be, you won't get any hounding from us. because you want to, check out what's going on at Florida State. So check it out anywhere that you've got social media, even down to, I think it's called Hive. We've got Hive or something like that. We're everywhere. So if you put in at Spearatics, you'll find us. You type in Chris Frazier Spearatics in Google, it'll bring all of them up. You won't have a problem in the world. You'll see videos. If y'all would like, I think we've got, I want to say 15 or 20 Florida State athletes that have been on Spearatics, that if you went in and typed Chris Frazier at Spearatics interviews, it would pop up all of those interviews. Like you could, listen to how an offensive lineman thinks every day. What's the defensive lineman doing, to get ready for the season, or what different mindset does a defensive lineman have than an offensive lineman? It's actually completely different, whether you believe it or not. One talks about destroying something. The other one talks about protecting it with his life. It's a battle, but one's worried about demolishing something, and the other one's worried about it not getting touched. And to listen to the difference in those two mindsets, even though it's kind of the same, but it's really not. We've had Trey Benson on as well. That's a really good interview to listen to. He gets in the deep metrics of mental health, when it comes to being a running back and things like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that you would learn about football, even if you didn't care about Florida State, so to speak. There's a lot of stuff from athletes in there that you would like. So, at Spearatics, you can find us anywhere. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for coming on. And, last thing. So, one, Commissioner Petiti, I am imaginationally opening the door to allow these people in. So please tell us by the end of the season that Florida State is coming. This is what all the fan bases want. This is what both fan bases want.
Yep.
To your point, this would be a good, not even good, a great move to bring Florida State. And I also kind of figured that something like this would happen when we did see that all this giant list of ACC schools do not like the media deal that they're currently in, and you're stuck in it for like another 13 years. Like, what's with that? That's like too long of a media deal without having to be okay with going back and restructuring. And I think that's where the ACC is going to disappear started from, because it was the ACC commission was not willing to work on the deal and revise the deal. And it's kind of like, you go into the office, hey boss, I've been here for a really long time. I work my butt off all the time. Can I have a raise? I feel like I deserve a raise and it would be appreciated. Well, no, you can't have a raise, even though you work your butt off, because now guess what? You got to go work your butt off even more. Well, thanks. See ya.
Time to look for a new job.
Yeah. And I do kind of hope this happens, maybe in reverse, but so my playoffs is Georgia and USC and Ohio State and Florida State.
That's my identical prediction as well. I've got it on my page.
I have it up on Instagram. I talk about it so much, but I haven't made a video on it.
That'd be a cool video. Yeah, I definitely agree with those picks, personally. I think that USC is going to run that conference this year. I think that y'all are going to I'm predicting y'all to do what I think you're going to do. Come out of the Big Ten, and I don't see anyone knocking Georgia off this year as far as in the SEC goes. I mean, the real national championship game, like, everybody's got to be real. The real national championship game last year was Ohio State against Georgia. Like,
oh yeah,
and y'all don't even know how bad I was wanting that. Just, what was it? Marvin Harris that got hurt?
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, man. That kid's special. He's back, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, y'all. Who's the quarterback for Ohio State this year?
So going into the season, it's supposed to be Kyle McCord, but from what I hear, it could be Devin Brown, and the Michigan fan base is scared of Devin
Yeah.
because Devin is kind of like Troy Smith, Justin Fields esque,
So
and
what?
passing really
When
good.
did y'all get him? How long has he been in the program?
Devin, I believe Devin is like a freshman or sophomore. He hasn't
Okay.
been here very long.
Well, I mean, y'all have been known over the past, especially for the past decade, of bringing in really good quarterbacks and obviously wide receivers.
Oh yeah.
Um, what do you feel like Ohio State's defense is going to take a step even more into the right direction this year than I thought y'all were pretty good last year, but I'd seen some Ohio State fans. They were complaining a little bit about. I don't know if it was linebackers that they were talking about that they would have wanted improved last year, but anyway, I was just wondering if y'all felt like y'all's defense was going to make a step forward versus what it was.
I mean, it's year two, going into year two in a new system for the defense. So going into last year, I felt maybe the defense was going to take a step back, but I was honestly surprised the way the defense played last year. I felt like they played pretty good. And to answer your question, yes, I do think that the defense is going to take a step forward and approach that top 10, top 5 type of defense, because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I believe we were outside the top 10 defenses. And so with the program the way that it is, that to me personally, like top 5 is outstanding, but that's like a whole nother tier-esque kind of like different planet type. If the defense can get from what I thought was more like a top 15, top 20 defense to a top 10, then that's about the progress that should be made.
I look forward to this football season being the last season with the 14 playoffs. I'm also ready for the 12 to be here. That's why I'm wondering what each fan base's expectations of their team. I know, is it true? I guess is what my question is, because I've heard outsiders say it, but I've never really heard that Ohio State fans actually believe this way or are thinking this way. If Ryan Day doesn't win y'all a national title this year, is he really on the hot seat?
To me, no, personally. As far as the fan base, that's what I'm hearing as well. And not even national championship. It, from what I hear here locally in Columbus, it comes down to you either need to beat Harbaugh or you're going to either get like some pay cuts or something that you ain't going to like is going to happen. It's like he's 45-6 coming into
Yeah.
this 45-6. He is Urban Meyer-esque. The only problem is he hasn't been able to beat Michigan the last 2 years. And you want to get rid of a successful coach. I mean, maybe he's going through the Harbaugh type of stuff that Harbaugh went through when he first went to Michigan. Nobody remembers the fact that Harbaugh started, 0-5 against Ohio State? Now, all it is now is we beat Ohio State the last 2 years. Well, we still in the Harbaugh era own you 5-2.
Yep. So it's with y'all's fan base. It's more of you don't beat Michigan. That's the pedigree that's got to be met.
Because that game is different. Like, I don't know if you saw or read anything about it on Big Ten Media Days, but I guess Ryan Day made a comment about the game is just another game, and with the 12-team playoff coming in, it may not hurt the Big Ten to look to move when the game is played instead of the day after Thanksgiving. It wouldn't be a bad idea to move it up to before then. And I don't know if I haven't done anything on him saying that because I haven't fully looked into it, but I don't know if he's saying like, with the 12 team coming in, it may be a good option because we're having to shift and adjust our schedules and like when we start, when we're going to finish. I know there's like a layout of how they want to do the playoff, but again, what's the context to his comment,
Yeah. And I was just about to say that what fans I give them to realize is, when you have big time media asking these coaches questions, they're asking them questions to give a short term answer to. It's up to the coach to give context to why they say it. And if it's just they're trying to get away from it, get it over with, ask Rondé why he would want to change the scheduling of the game, not just get the context reasons before y'all get mad at the man's what I'm trying to say. Find out why he said what he said. Maybe it gears toward the success of Ohio State over, the future of what's moving forward. Because I kind of think I know what he's talking about, but I don't want to give my context to why I think that makes sense. Because we play Florida State there. I mean, we play Florida every year around Thanksgiving as well. It's always the same. And there's talks about that game being moved maybe if this 12-team playoff goes into effect, but not from our coaches. Our coaches didn't speak on it. Administrations from both schools did. But we'll see what happens in the near future. But y'all don't get mad at Rondé because he said that. Whoo, fans, man.
I know, it's so dumb.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I'm literally, I got to get something for my kids before I go, and then I'm about to head to this event. But I appreciate you having me on, and I'll be looking for the clips that you did, and hope to have you on our show as well when it comes to breaking down the Buckeyes coming up.
Yeah, just keep in touch. Let me know when you want to do it. Hopefully my schedule will allow me to do it, and we can go from there.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I know y'all Buckeyes don't care about this, but go Noles.
Go Noles.